Hello, my name is Cathryn Bell, and I'm here today to talk to you about HyperDocs for Littles. Now, this presentation is geared towards kindergarten through second grade classes. However, you could definitely use some of this stuff with older kids. And I hope that you get something out of this today. So a little bit about me before we begin. I'm a graduate of St. Mary's College here in Indiana. I have taught for 16 years with the South Bend School Corporation. I taught 1 year of second grade, and then the rest have been in kindergarten, so I have a lot of experience with 5- and 6-year-olds. I have 2 daughters, Charlotte and Selena, who attend Kennedy Academy, where I teach, and we live in South Bend with my husband, Cole. So what is a HyperDoc? A HyperDoc is a document that has links, definitely. However, it also gives students a way to communicate back and give feedback to a teacher. So there are many different ways that kids can do this. There are many different programs that kids can show their work through. I have a couple of examples here in this HyperDoc. If you search online, though, there are many, many examples. There's some really cool things that older students could do, and can also different programs that they can utilize. So we won't be showing those in this presentation simply because 5- and 6-year-olds don't really have the grasp of that quite yet. Before I move any further, I want to talk to you about the way that my screen looks right now. You might be wondering why I'm not presenting my full screen. You might be wondering why you can see my slide deck. When I started to work with HyperDocs with my wonderful DIS, Holly Schwartz, we started with Google Slides, and as e-learning progressed and school ended in March and we had to push out a lot of e-learning to our students, this is what worked best for my kindergartners. They, not being in present mode, really helped them be able to see where they were in the course of a lesson. It helped them get back to where they left off if one of my links took them to a different website. It also helped me out if a parent was having trouble with a slide. They could tell me, oh, well, slide 5 isn't working right. So this is what worked best for me. I did tell my parents and my kids that if they were having problems playing a video, that they could go into present mode, so that way it might play a little bit easier, but then they would have to escape to get back. So let's talk about my HyperDoc. I'm going to show you today the HyperDoc that I used with my class when we started e-learning. I definitely want to tell you that this is not how my e-learning began. This is not how my HyperDocs began. They were nothing like this. It took a lot of feedback from parents about what worked for their students and what didn't. It took a lot of feedback from my wonderful team that I work with. We really tried to work with lots of different forums and lots of different programs to see what worked best for our kids. And in the end, this worked really well. I got some really good feedback from my parents, and they really liked this. So let's get started. So when a student, I pushed all of my HyperDocs, all of my Google slideshows through Google Classroom. I would upload it every morning at about 9 o'clock, and every student got a copy, so that way if they made a change on a slide, it did not affect the rest of the students' slides. And they could turn it in at the end if they wanted. However, it was not required for me because the work that they did was already inside my Google slideshow, and you'll see that in a minute. So when a student began, they opened up their slideshow, and this is the first screen that they would see. It would have a video right here, and then it would have a Flipgrid link next to it. So I'm going to talk about how I did my videos, and then we'll talk about Flipgrid as well. So I have studied responsive classroom over the past couple years, and I really, really find it very important for building relationships with students. So when I was starting e-learning, I wanted to make sure that I had a way that the students could still see my face and hear my voice, kind of like in a morning meeting way. So using Screencastify, I would record myself every day or the night before, and then I would upload it onto YouTube. And if I close this screen so you can see this screen, I'm going to have to move myself over just a minute. Here it is. These are all the videos that I have done for my e-learning. Okay, so I would take from Screencastify, I would open up Screencastify, and I would upload it onto YouTube. Okay, I made my own YouTube channel that is not affiliated with the school corporation. It's under a separate username. I would upload a video, and when I uploaded a video, you'll see like this one right here. When I would upload a video, I would change the first picture. YouTube has a wonderful way of finding the worst picture to make as your thumbnail. So I would edit it, and I would make just a fun video, a fun little picture of what I wanted the beginning thing for them to see. So like as you see from this right here, I would, down here where it said a thumbnail, I would upload a picture. So this was our G Day. We did the alphabet backwards. For our G Day, I uploaded a picture of a goat in glasses. And I would make sure that I put hello on the front so that way they knew that that was the message that they were getting. It was their hello message. And then I also put the date so they knew what date that they were working on. From there, I would, let's come back to my other screen. From there, I would then upload that video onto my Google Doc. So the way that I did that was I would insert and then video. And then from that YouTube page, I would copy the link from there, and I would put it here, and it would pop up, and it would show up right here. Now, when I did my YouTube videos, I made sure that they were unlisted, so that way no one could search for them. I did not make them private, though, because sometimes that caused problems for parents when they were trying to watch it. So when my students would open up this slide, they would click on this video.
Happy Monday. It's a brand new e-learning week. Let me tell you what you're going to do today in your slideshow, and then I have someone to give a yay to, and you can get started.
So that's what I would do. I would start every single day with a video greeting the students, telling them what day it was. I tried not to say good morning or good evening because I knew that some of my students would not be doing their e-learning at a specific time of day, and I wanted my students to feel like the video was for them. My students were actively writing their numbers to 1,000 over during our quarantine. So you heard me reference, and I have somebody that I'm going to give my yay to. What I would do is if they wrote to a certain number, like 900, their parents would email me and we would say, yay! So I would give them a little shout out. And I had a lot of parents tell me that their kids really liked being able to hear their own name so that they knew there was some connection. Now, the next thing I would tell them at the end of my video is, for your Flipgrid assignment today, I want you to tell me, and then I would give them the topic. So their Flipgrid assignment for this day was, like I said, this one was our K day. And so they told me what was their favorite thing about kindergarten. What I did was they would click on this Flipgrid box. Oh, there we go. Flip on the Flipgrid box, and they would click on the blue word underneath. Now, I had already explained all of this to my kids in a different video. I had made up videos for my parents to show them how to do this. I showed parents how to use Flipgrid. I showed kids how to use Flipgrid, all through videos. So they'd click on that. And the first page would show them that they would need to log in, and so they would log in. They were already signed in through Google, so it would take them right through their Google account. And they didn't need to type in their passwords or anything like that. Like I said, they were logged in through their Google account. And then they would come down here and they could listen to my message to tell them what they needed to do that day.
For your letter K Flipgrid today, I want you to tell me what has been your favorite part of kindergarten.
So they would listen to that, and then they would come down here, and as you can see, they would tell me what their favorite part of kindergarten was. I always made sure that I added a response for them to hear about what my favorite part of kindergarten was. And then as you can see, they got a little creative after a while. They started to learn how to use the emojis and the pictures and the writing so that they could jazz it up a little bit. This was one way that kids could communicate with me and I could communicate back. For the e-learning that I did in the spring, I made it very lighthearted, and they could just tell me whatever they wanted. In the future, I will utilize Flipgrid to talk about the subject that is at hand. Whatever we're working on in our classroom, I will use this tool for them to talk to me about what they think about it, to share their thoughts, to also tell me what they learned. This is a good way to kind of assess their learning and see kind of where they are at that point. When we do return to the classroom in person, I will still use Flipgrid because kids really love it. It's a great way, and it gives me something to show their parents when I talk with them. So when a student was done with this, they could go back to their Google slideshow, and it took them right back there. We talked a lot about tabs before we left the school year. And so kids knew how to get back and forth from a tab. I also made a video for my parents to show them how to get back and forth from a tab. So they would move on. They knew they could go to the next one. And then I would teach through videos, and I would make sure that my students knew what one to watch first and then what one to watch second. So I made sure that we had 1 and 2. I usually would start with a lesson and then follow it up with an educational video. So this is our sight words. For this video, what I did, I'm going to mute myself very quickly. For this video, what I did was I used Google Docs and I wrote down all our quarter 4 sight words. And then I recorded myself, much like I'm doing right now with Screencastify, to go over the words with the kids as I read them down. The check marks were the ones that we had already covered, so that way I knew that I had gotten those done. And then the highlighted one was the one they were focusing on for that day. So I recorded it on Screencastify. I uploaded it on YouTube just like I did on that one. And then I decided to find a sight word song for them to listen to after that. So Jack Hartman is a big person in the kindergarten world, and I inserted his video in the exact same way that I did my YouTube videos. I just went to insert, video, and then what's awesome about inserting a video from YouTube is that you don't necessarily need the URL. You can just type in what you're searching for. And everything comes up. So once you choose a video, you just click on it. So if I wanted them to take a break, I'd select it. Creates the video, and then it pops up on the screen. And then you can, of course, shrink it to whatever size you need, put it there, put it wherever you want. So that's what I did for those. They'd move on to the next one, and then it was time for writing. So for our writing HyperDoc, what I did was, if I had older students, I would put a Flipgrid in here for them to take a picture of their work and put it right onto Flipgrid. The nice thing about Flipgrid is that you can make them private, that they can respond to just you instead of the entire class. So if a student is self-conscious or worried about having other kids see their work, you can control it that they don't have to do that. And Flipgrid also gives you an opportunity to give them a video back based on their video, and no one else sees that. It gives her feedback. So for writing, here I am again on video talking to the kids about what I want them to do for writing. I then told them that they needed to have their parents send me a picture at my email address, and you could click right on that and it would get you to an email. Or they could text a picture of their writing to this phone number right here. This phone number right here is a Google number. It is not my personal phone number. However, it is a number that I got that you can easily get through Google, and it sends straight to your phone. That was easier for a lot of my parents to understand how to just take a picture of it and send it to me like that. And it also made it, having that Google number also made it a little easier for my parents to communicate with me if they wanted. I do not suggest this for everyone. If you don't want parents to text you at odd times of the day, this is probably not the way to go. I had a pretty good group of parents though last year that respected boundaries, and they knew not to text at certain times. And I laid all that out for them as well. So in my video here, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but what I did tell my students that they needed to click on the picture next to it to get to the video that they needed to watch. So if they click on this video, it takes them to a Mystery Doug lesson. And they get to listen to this Mystery Doug lesson about how old is Earth. And so my kids loved Mystery Doug. They listened to him, and then they would respond to the video in a way that I wanted them to. So this video, I believe, was just tell me what you think. We saw other science videos where the students had to answer the question before they watched the video. I had some where the students were instructed to work on a certain writing skill that I had seen lacking in some of the pictures that parents had been sending me. So this was a good way to check their work and give them some feedback. So once the kids were done with this one, they could go back. As you can see, my tabs are really starting to fill up there. As long as it wasn't too distracting for my kids, I did not tell them that they had to close out on a tab. So another writing one, I just quickly put this up here real quick. This was another writing one. I talked to them about using sight words in their writing, and so I put all of those sight words around here. I did not do this one this way, but I wish that I would have. I would like to turn all of these words into links to sight word songs so that the kids, if they weren't sure about what that word was, they could click on that to listen to a song and then come back and do their writing. I incorporated break time into my e-learning. Initially, we had imagined that e-learning was only going to be sporadic, on the odd snow day. So we put break time in so that kids didn't feel like they had to plow through the whole thing right away. Like, okay, this is your time to stop and think. The kids, after a while, we started to tell parents, do half of it in the morning, half of it in the afternoon. Skip the break times if you don't want to do them. So break time was good for some kids and it wasn't good for others. They just didn't care for it, and it was okay if they skipped it. So I inserted a video from YouTube again. This one right here was how I had began to do e-learning. So I'm going to hit play so you can hear this. Sorry about that. I'm just going to open it up bigger. Oh, I put it on mute. I apologize.
It's time to take a break. It's time to take a break. You may do the video below, or if you'd like, step away from your device and take a break somewhere else. When you're ready, come back and move on to the next slide.
Okay. So when I first started, I was kind of shy to be in front of a camera. It's not necessarily the way that I ever thought to teach. You don't like to stare at yourself while you're talking to a camera. But so what I did instead was using Screencastify, I taped my screen. I recorded my screen, and I found an emoji that said sound on, and I made that cover the entire screen. And then I taped my screen with my voice in the background so you could hear me, but you couldn't see my face. And I told my students whenever they saw this picture right here, they had to click on it because it was going to tell them what to do. So for a while I used that. I still kept it on my take a break slides, but after a while I moved away from that and I just put my face there because that's really what they wanted to see anyway. All right, so we moved on. We did story time. I would use videos. I would use stories from Epic, and I would read to them. I would embed myself in the screen, much like I'm doing right now, using Screencastify, and read the stories to them so that way they could hear my voice, and I could teach through there. They would click on it. I would upload the video to YouTube, and then I would put it onto here. Next is, this is a learning website. So we did use some online websites that we really thought were helpful to the kids. This one right here is Reading A to Z. Of course, I used my arrows again and my numbers so the kids knew which one to click on first. And I wrote out instruction for parents to help their students log in because this website and another that we use did need a bit of parental help. Not too much, but it did need some help. So there we go.
Boys and girls, today for your reading, you need to read 2 books and then take the quizzes on those books. And that's it for today.
So I would give instructions in any video that they saw. They knew that if they saw me, they had to click on it so that way they could hear what to do. So they'd click on the robot, and that link would pop up. They would click on a link. And it took me right to there because I was already signed in. Let me log out real quick. Oh, it's going to stay me logged in. It took me right there, but the kids would click on their name, and then they would type in their password. If someone forgot what their password was or didn't know what to do, they would just come back here, and then they would type in their password, which was 1234. So let's type in this little guy's password. And then they would come here and there's their work. They would click on level up like I told them in the directions in the other spot. And then there were books for them to read. The great thing about this program is that if they click on a book to read, and they click read, they can read the book that's there, but they can also record their reading, and so that was a way for me to hear them reading at home. Like in my directions said, the kids had 2 books that they had to read that day, and I let them choose whatever books they wanted to read. However, you could assign it to them. So there's that. So let me show you how I created the link to get to Reading A to Z. So to get to Reading A to Z, what I would do is I would have a picture, okay? And then I found this picture just on the internet. Found a picture of the robot. The kids knew what the robot was. I would find it and I would click on it. And then from there, you just go down and you insert link. And then you type in the link. As you can see, it's kidsatz.com. I would apply it, and there it was. That's how easy it was. They had another break. And then the next 2 things I'm going to show you are kind of the same. They're similar. I wanted to show you an example of both of them so that way you knew another way that I utilized kind of this HyperDoc. So we were learning about the silent E. Students would click on my picture, okay? And then there was a Jack Hartman video for them to listen to as well. Now, my students learned early on that whenever they saw this question mark, they had to click on it because that question mark would lead them to a place that they could show me their work. So I'm going to show you right now what that is. So I click on that. It would take them to a Google form. Now, Google Forms are a great way to get information from really anybody. And the nice thing about Google Form is that it puts all the information that you're looking for right into a spreadsheet for you. So I would put in videos for them to listen to directions because kindergartners really can't read at this point. So they would need someone to tell them. And we can't always rely on parents to read the directions to them. I know that in a perfect world, parents would be sitting right next to their children while they are doing this. However, things come up and some of these kiddos might be doing it on their own. I wanted to make this I wanted to make it so that a kid was as self-sufficient as they could do their e-learning. So I would upload a video. In a moment, I'll show you how I did that. I'd upload a video. They knew they'd write their name. And then in my opening video, I would tell them what the directions were for the rest of the page. So this one is the basic one. They just had to read the word and pick which one it said. Okay. When they were done, they would submit it. So let's go to okay. So this is a Google form, what it looks like from the teacher's angle. Like this is what I have here. So I would put a title there. And then for here, I would record my video on YouTube. And then on the side here, I would add a video. And just like in the Google Slides, you do it in Google Form. I'd put in the URL for that video, press select, and it would pop up here. Now, one thing about these videos is when they first start, they're off to the side. I really wanted them to be centered, so that's an easy way to center it. You can reuse these forms as well, as long as you make a copy of them, and that makes this little feature right here, this change button, so much better, because then you can just click change and put a different video in that you want. So I would do that, and then I would create all of my questions. These are simply just pictures that I took of my whiteboard and uploaded them. I wrote the word on a whiteboard and took a picture of it and put them right there. I would find pictures online of what I wanted them to be. And then I would make sure that I made these questions required so that a child couldn't just click submit at the bottom and then just keep going. Because we all know that they would just fly to the bottom and do it. If they didn't answer all these questions, it wouldn't let them keep going forward. So I made all these. At the end of the day, the next day, I would come back in, and I did not make one of these and all of the responses are right here. Now I have all of my kiddos' names there. And then it showed me through graphs of how all these kids responded. I very rarely looked at those graphs. It was a great way to do that. You could also turn off the accepting responses box if you wanted it to be done. If you had a set date that you don't want those to be answered anymore, you could click that. However, the great thing about Google Forms is that you can create a spreadsheet. And so you click on that create a spreadsheet button, and then you can create a new one, or you can select one that you've already got in your drive. You hit create. And voila. It shows you not only shows you what kids have said, but it also shows you what time they submitted it. So, and then you would just find that work in your Google Drive, and you could collect it in a folder. So my Google Drive was set up that it was for every day. I had a different one. And in that folder, it had my Google slideshow. It had any Google Forms that spreadsheets that I wanted for that day, and it also had any Google form. It was a great way to stay organized, and it went right into there, and I could go back and check who did their work and who didn't. I did the same thing for math. As you can see, here's a math one, and I already made the slideshow for that. I mean, the spreadsheet for that. Here's that. It allows me to see how kids answered and who got it wrong and who got it right. The nice thing about these Google Forms is that it gave me immediate information, and it allowed me to shape my teaching during a time that I couldn't be right there with my kids. If my students, I had to teach decomposing to my students through the computer, which was not a great way to teach it. And it took quite a few days to teach that lesson, and I had to come back, and I was able to use the data that I got from these Google Forms to help guide my teaching. All right, so that was math. And then my kids would come down. We did Happy Numbers as our math program for e-learning. They did it the exact same way as they did Reading A to Z. I inserted a picture and inserted a link. Click there. They'd find their name, they'd click on it, and then they'd put in their password, and they would work for 10 minutes on that. When they were done, they'd come back. And I would do a closing circle. Like I said, in Responsive Classroom, they're big on starting your day with a morning meeting and ending your day with a closing circle. So it was important for me that the students got to see me in a non-teaching way at least one more time. And towards the end of the year, we were reading Junie B. Jones. So I took that time to read Junie B. Jones to all the kids. I talked about what they had done for the day in their e-learning. If it was a Thursday, I would let them know that they didn't have e-learning the next day. It also gave me an opportunity to tell them where they needed to go for specials that day. So over here, we have the Flipgrid link again. They would click on that Flipgrid link again if they wanted to see what their friends had to say. Another nice thing about Flipgrid is that they can go there and they can watch what other people have said and kind of add it to the conversation. With bigger kids, I would definitely show them how they can respond to each other's Flipgrid messages, because I think that's a great way for them to maintain some sort of community if they're not together. It's a great way to do class discussions as well. I may teach that to my kindergartners this year, but there are some things that might be a bit over their heads. But I definitely think that second graders could do that. I think it would be a great thing for them to do. And then, so they could go back and see that. And then the last thing is, if they clicked on my picture down here, they knew it took them back to their Google Classroom. And it took them back to their Google Classroom homepage, so they could click on gym or Spanish or art or music. They knew that they could get back there by clicking on my picture. And the parents knew that they could get back there by clicking on my picture. So this is what my students utilized for all of e-learning. This was the most helpful thing for my kids. I had never imagined using HyperDocs before like this, and there's still a lot that I know that I can learn about using HyperDocs and making them even better. I look forward to exploring those things through EdTech in the Bend, through online learning. I definitely want to do more for my kids and teach better through the computer, which we're going to have to do. If you have any questions whatsoever, I am more than happy to answer them for you. This is my email. I hope that you learned something today that was of use for you in your classroom. And thank you for listening to my presentation.